Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We're in Paul's letter to Titus, chapter 1, verses 10 through 16. Now, in the prior passage, Paul talks about his calling as an apostle to further God's elect in their faith. And now he says to Titus, I kept you in Crete so that you could strengthen the church, and you could do that by raising up leaders who are committed to the sound doctrine of the gospel and live that out. Now, the reason he says that is where we pick up. He says, because there are many rebellious people. And where are these rebellious people? Well, they're in the church. He's not talking about people out in society who are pagans. He's talking about the very people in the church and folks who are relying on their own religiosity. And they're not listening to the sound doctrine of Jesus Christ. And he says, you know, they're full of meaningless talk, empty talk and deception, especially those of the circumcision group. Now, this is the group that said that you have to go through the Jewish rite of circumcision to be good enough for Jesus. And Paul says, you know, those folks who say you got to cut yourself to be good enough, they don't get it. And it's not, they are basically the Jesus plus something else crowd. He says these opponents to the gospel must not be given a platform in which to influence the rest of the church, because their empty talk, their deceiving words and work are going to lead the whole church astray. He says, you know, you're going to see this disrupt whole families. When we say families, we don't mean a nuclear family. We're talking about a whole extended family. And he says the reason why these people do that is to promote their own selves. It is about gaining status and influence at the expense of the mission of the church, at the expense of the other people of the church. And then Paul utters this ethnic slur. He says, Cretans are always liars, evil brutes, and lazy gluttons. Now he says, well, that was a poet who wrote that like 600 BC, and Paul doubles down on it. But I think the way to really read that passage is that whether they're Cretans or Americans or whoever they are, sinners are always liars, evil brutes, and lazy gluttons, because that's the nature of sin. Because sin is rebellion against God. That's who these rebellious people are. They're sinners. And that's why Paul says you must rebuke them sharply. Preach the law that convicts them so that you can try to guide them away from mythological speculations and all that whole New Age nonsense, which is still alive today. And to help them not to rely on human philosophy that looks at the human being and doesn't appraise us rightly and denies the gospel. He says, you know, for those who are pure, everything is pure. But for those who are corrupt, everything is corrupt. Just like for those people who are liars, they think everybody lies, right? And so these rebellious people, these sinners, their minds, their consciences are corrupted. Why? Because as Lutherans, we say we are in bondage to sin. We're born into that corruption. And these rebellious people, these sinners, they claim to know God, but by their actions, they show that they really don't know the God of the cross and the God of grace. And they deny Christ. Sinners are detested and disobedient and depraved, unable to do anything good on their end. But here's the thing, redeemed sinners who live by the hope of the eternal gospel are loved by God as children. They are obedient to God, and they are virtuous in that they live rightly with God. Well, thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.